Starting our third hour here on Thursday, February 6th. So we've got with us in studio Jay McDaniel. Jay's the executive director of the Mississippi Gaming Commission. Morning, Jay.
Good morning, Lucian. Glad to be here.
Y'all, if you've got questions about what's going on at the Gaming Commission or gaming in Mississippi or anything else, hit us up on the C Spire text line at 601-879-4395. Well, Jay, tell us a little bit what's going on right now with Mississippi's casino industry.
Casino industry, which is our primary gaming industry, very strong. We're a very viable market. We have 26 operating casinos with a variety of different operators up and down the river and the Gulf Coast. 2024 total gaming revenue to the state was a little over $2.4 billion.
Wow.
Which was down 2% from the year before. We've seen a little bit of a decrease in revenue since the post-pandemic when everything really shot up. So, but we're still ahead of our levels from 2018, 2019.
Really?
Yeah. We were at about $2.2 billion pre-pandemic. So while we've come down a little bit, they're still stronger than we've been historically in the last decade. But that translates to about $200 million to the state in tax revenue and another $100 million to local tax revenue in the cities and counties where the casinos operate. So, all's rocking along right now. Our biggest problem is really our illegal gaming market with the just the advance of mobile and online operators trying to get their product out there. I think we're losing money to those operators. That right now, that's our fight that we're trying to really strengthen. Where people are playing some sort of illegal casino game on their phone. That's right, and they're just getting more and more brazen. You see them advertised now on TV. Even they call them different things, sweepstakes casinos. These operators act like they're legal when they're not, and so the player doesn't know. Yeah, they don't realize they're violating the law. A lot of time they don't, and they'll start you off play for free, and then now do you want to buy some some coins or whatever. And that's just gotten. It was something that was just kind of in the shadows, but it's really gotten bigger. So we've actually working with a Senate bill right now that would increase the penalties against those operators, and I'm hoping that's something that we can take more action against this year. Are these mostly offshore operators, or are these people operating in the U.S.? Well, they used to be, yeah, and that's why I say it used to kind of be in the shadows. Primarily your sports betting apps. The big one, most people that sports bet know is Bovada. They're a big one. They're in Curacao. And then there's MyBookie. There's a bunch of sports betting that are offshore. But these sweepstakes casinos, a lot of those are domestic. And, really? And like I said, they're kind of operating well, we think we're legal. And they do it without asking, of course. They don't come to us and say, do we need a license? They just do it. And so if you Googled sweepstakes casinos across the nation, you're seeing several states take action. Most states are like us, like, no, our laws prohibit that. A sweepstakes is not a casino. It's you buy a Coke and you might win a prize. And fascinating. So it is becoming more and more of a domestic companies trying to just make money off of it. And I think their thought is, if we can make a lot at the outset, we'll take the penalty on the back end. So, that makes sense. So by increasing the penalties, you sort of change the incentive structure. That's what we're hoping to. Yeah. Do you still see inside the state illegal illegal gaming operations, the sort of way I think of them, somewhere in the back of a bar where somebody's got a roulette table or something like that, or is that kind of no longer done these days? No, it's still out there. Okay. And I'll tell you, that's one of those, they're out there. We typically would initiate a case on those if we get a call from a local sheriff or a DA. It's like, hey, we've got someone running, an illegal gambling operation. And what we will typically do is the seizure of the machine or the seizure of the games usually shuts those down. Okay. We don't need those stiffer penalties because you start taking games and they keep having to pay to put them back. Eventually, there's no you're not making any money there. Right. So the old days of tackling those where you could just walk in and take the games worked. Now that we're dealing with online, it's a different kind of game. Yeah, so, I guess the costs are just much lower for those folks. That's right. When you think about the market in Mississippi, is it principally a domestic market? Are these Mississippians playing at Mississippi casinos, or is it a mix? And how does that kind of break down? Do you know? Well, one thing we're proud of is if you look at our numbers, for our 26 casinos, over 60% of our visitors are out of state, which is what we want. We want it to be a tourism-driven market, and the coast is the biggest of that. And it's not just Louisiana and Alabama. It's not just our neighbors. These are people flying in. MGM and Caesars have flights that they bring in their Vegas customers. Wow. And then you have people coming from Atlanta and Texas. So one thing, Lucian, that the biggest threat to our market is really competition. The states like Texas and Georgia, high population states that don't have casino gaming, we watch them carefully because Texas is talking about it right now. If they were to legalize casino gaming, it would definitely impact our market. So one thing our operators, they're aware of this. They need a product out there that if we do see a new Georgia casino, ours is still better than that one.
Right.
You want a Gulf Coast that people want to come to. You want, the river counties, you want them to be tourism driven because we want those players coming from out of state. So, and then you do have your locals that enjoy it as well.
And it's a completely different environment than what it was when the Gaming Control Act was originally passed, right?
Yes.
We were what, the third or fourth state to legalize gaming? Do you know?
Yeah, I believe we were around the fourth or fifth. We had Nevada and New Jersey were primarily, Atlantic City and Nevada were kind of the big ones.
Right.
And then in the early 90s, us and Louisiana did it about the same time. Missouri did it, and it was this riverboat idea. It's kind of old, like, oh, it's just this nostalgic. We'll put it on the river or on the Gulf Coast. One, because I don't know. That was just the idea to have it on the border where you could get, again, people coming in. And then once they saw how much money you could make off of it, they call it the Mississippi Miracle. In the mid-'90s, it just exploded, and the riverboats became physical structures. And then, of course, after Hurricane Katrina, that more laws were
on shore.
Yeah, allowed some to come on shore. But you're right. I think if you were to look back at what we thought it was going to be in 1990, I think people would be amazed at what it actually became.
It's impressive to me how well we continue to do having so much more competition. Now that you do have a bunch of states nearby that have it.
You're right. It's we used to get a lot of our customers, especially in the Tunica market. That's the market that struggled the most. A lot of Midwest gaming, a lot of people coming down from Illinois, Indiana, Iowa. Well, now those states all have gaming. But fortunately, they've held their own. While it's declined, there's still 6 casinos in Tunica and one in Lula just down the river there. So, yeah, it really is. It's a credit to those operators that still are able to provide a product that people want to come to because, yes, you can pick. There's like 30 states now that have gaming. And fortunately, in the Southeast, we don't have as much competition, but it's coming.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing, and I don't know who, certainly the commission, I don't know who all deserves credit for this, but one thing I think we've done a great job of, my sense is requiring that the casinos be real destinations. They're not slot parlors with snack bars. These are resort destinations where you could take your family, enjoy a long weekend, and so there is a real argument that it's a tourist draw as opposed to something you might see just kind of on the side of the road in a truck stop somewhere.
Yeah, and I think you give the credit to the past legislature and the past commission. When the legislature passed the Gaming Control Act in the 90s, they gave the commission the ability to, you pass what regulations you need, to expand the market. And then those commissions in the late 90s and the 2000s, I give those commissioners credit. Once they saw that, they're like, we don't want people just coming in, parking some slot parlors and leaving. They started putting in, you got to build amenities. You got to, for every dollar you spend on gaming, you got to spend $1 somewhere else. So you started adding golf courses and marinas and things like that. So, yeah, just the predecessors that came saw that, and that's kind of where we are today. If you build a casino today, there are certain infrastructure requirements you have to meet in order to even build. So.
It really is impressive. Well, in terms of, obviously, the legislature's in town. We're about a month in. We've had the first deadline has passed, so a few things have died. Are there, I assume there are things y'all are paying particular attention to at the legislature. I realize y'all's job is to follow what the legislature does, not to tell them what to do. But what are the bills that y'all are paying particular attention to?
Yeah, the one that gets the most press is the mobile sports betting bill, right, because it's come up the last few years, and last year actually passed the House. This year it's House Bill, I think, 1302. That's a mobile sports betting bill that the House Gaming Committee passed, and now the House floor has passed it. So it's already been transmitted to the Senate. So it's kind of the first one that's crossed the other chamber, and that's just to legalize sports betting outside of the casinos and allow mobile sports betting. Now, it's a real controversial bill. There are a lot of people that want it, some people that don't. So we're watching it because from our standpoint, it's like you said, if they pass it, we're going to regulate it, and we're going to be in a position to do it quickly and do it well. But until that bill passes, it's just kind of a wait and see.
But right now, it's legal to bet on sports, but you've got to do it in a licensed brick-and-mortar casino property. Is that essentially what current law says?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Our general criminal gaming statutes say gaming is illegal across the state, all forms, slot machines, sports betting. Unless there's an exception, and one of those exceptions is if you're in a casino, you can do it, or if you're in a bingo hall, you can play bingo for charity, those kinds of things. So that's one of the exceptions. So that would need to be changed to say you could also bet on a mobile app.
Okay, but if you're right now calling your guy to lay down a bet on the Super Bowl, you would be violating Mississippi law. You got to worry that Jay and some of his folks are showing up.
That is correct. Or if you're on your phone doing it, and it's not just Jay. One day maybe the FBI. So.
You got time to stick with us for another segment?
I do.
Y'all, this is Lucian Smith here on the Gallo Radio Show on SuperTalk Mississippi. We'll have more with Jay McDaniel, the Executive Director of the Mississippi Gaming Commission, after this. Jay McDaniel, the Executive Director of the Mississippi Gaming Commission, here talking a little bit about the legislative outlook on gaming. We were talking about this during the break because I think it's an interesting story. Talk a little bit about the evolution legally of sports betting in Mississippi generally, because it used to be there was a federal ban and a state ban, and we were talking about the state kind of got ahead of the federal ban being lifted so that we were positioned to have some sports betting here.
Yeah, sure. It is interesting. Back in late 80s, early 90s was when the federal ban went into place that outlawed sports betting nationally, except for a few states that were grandfathered in. So that's why you could always sports bet in Nevada, because they had a legalized market before. So when we passed the Gaming Control Act in 1980, sports betting was put in the act that it would be legal on a casino floor, but at the time there was a federal ban, but it was already legalized on a state basis. But there was a little tweak in there that you could only bet on an event at a casino, like a boxing match or something like that. So for years we didn't have sports betting legally. That's when you saw a lot of bookmakers is where you had to go, illegal bookmakers. And then New Jersey filed a lawsuit. Governor Chris Christie filed a lawsuit. Suit was filed mid 2015 to 2020, but basically 2018 is when the Supreme Court found in favor of New Jersey that federal ban was a commandeering. It had to do with constitutional issues where they struck it down. So what I give our legislature and our commissioners at the time credit was when those arguments were going on, we saw a real chance that this ban could be lifted. So let's get ahead of it. And the legislature made some tweaks to the law that was already there, saying those events that used to have to be on the premises, you can now bet on any sporting event, basically, as long as the commission promulgates regulations. So as soon as the ban went down, we put the regs out. I think it was April maybe of 2018. By August 1st, we had sports betting going at our casinos because the operators were ready for it. We already had the law in place, and that's why you can bet on a casino. But in order to legalize it mobily, that would be a whole nother bill, a whole nother change in the law. But so we had Louisiana and our neighbors jealous for a few years because it took them a little while to get it going. And then in 2022, we saw Louisiana pass it, Arkansas passed it, Tennessee passed it. And since then, we've seen a pretty good decline in our sports revenue.
Interesting, as those places have been able to offer it.
And you can go bet mobile in those states. So.
What other pieces of legislation are y'all watching in this legislative session?
So there's a bill that helps DHS collect back child support. This is something they already do at the lottery, for instance. If you have to go to the lottery to hand in your ticket because it's over whatever the threshold is, I believe it's $600, they look at a database, and if you owe child support, they withhold that. That was something put in place when the lottery was passed. Well, now they're going to put the same thing on the casino floor, where if you hit a taxable jackpot, which is over $1,200 on a slot machine, that the jackpot generates a tax form. And so when the casino staff go and look up your information anywhere, get your information, they're going to look in this database, and if you owe child support, they're going to withhold it. So this bill authorizes them to do that and basically puts it on us to put regulations in place that require that. So I know that's real important.
That happens in a lot of states.
Yeah, there are states that do it. Louisiana does it, and so me and some of the leaders at DHS went to Louisiana and looked at how they did it. And again, from our standpoint, DHS is for this. Anything to help collect child support is good, but it was putting an imposition on our casinos. So we wanted to make sure if they do it, can it be done? And so the bill that's currently, there's both a Senate and a House bill that have both passed the gaming committees, just waiting to go to the floor on that. So that would be, that wouldn't be a big deal to most, but it's just something we would have to work with. Our casinos would need to start doing that, and hopefully it would collect child support from DHS.
I got to imagine you've got some surprise players from time to time, who walk up with their $2,000 jackpot and are told, well, your child says thank you.
That's what we heard from Louisiana, is how many people were shocked. That question was asked in the committee meeting of how do you get this out publicly, and I think DHS would announce it, but how many people are going to hear that message until they exit? So you're right, there will be some surprised people, and it'll be up to up to the system to make sure it's accurate, that what you withhold is the right amount.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, and if you all have questions, please hit us up at the C Spire text line at 601-879-4395. One of the questions that has come through is there was movement last year towards establishing a casino in the city of Jackson. Do you have any insight on where that stands this year?
I probably have about the same amount most people do. That there was that hearing in the fall. I believe it was in December, actually, when the proponents of that actually spoke about it. And there's some, as you use the word movement, this idea of, for economic development, putting a casino, one single casino in Jackson. I've seen kind of some proposed what would be in a bill. There was a bill last year. So the idea, I think, was one casino of a certain size, I think $500 million or more investment within a radius of the capital, somewhere in the downtown area. But again, that would require, a lot of people ask me, like, I thought they had to be on the water. Well, that's what this bill would say. This one does not.
If you change the law, it's the law.
That's right. So, so it's something obviously Lucian will watch. Once if it were to ever be built and developed, it would be like any other casino as far as our regulation of it. But it's more about economic development. So I think if that came up, it would be more of a revenue bill. There was a general bill drop, but it died. It didn't go to committee. So I think if we were to see that, it would be later in the session as some type of revenue bill. Louisiana has a similar setup. They have 15 casinos that have to be on or near water, but there's one in New Orleans. That's all. It
was authorized specifically.
That's right. Very similar. One casino. The idea of, let's put something in the city that'll help drive the city, and so I think that this would be a very similar kind of concept.
And I know you all don't. You all don't necessarily advocate for legislation, right? I suspect from time to time you do, but generally you all wait and see what the legislature decides the policies are.
Typically, that's what we do. A bill will come up, and I give legislators credit. Both Chairman Uri on the House side and Chairman Blunt on the Senate side will usually consult with us on anything that has to do with gaming, and we'll discuss what we think the pros and cons are of it. At the end of the day, most of these decisions, they're decided by people that are elected, not appointed. So we're there to help. Like the criminal penalty bill, I'm really for. Just personally, I don't really speak for the commission, but me as the director in our day-to-day work in tackling illegal gaming, that Senate bill, 2510 is one that I would say, yes, I think that's a good bill. It makes sense. So when you get in areas like that where it's not a big policy issue, it's just increasing some criminal penalties that really should, in my view, already be there. We'll get more involved in those kinds of bills.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. As you look towards the future of gaming in Mississippi, and I know obviously we're all paying attention to what other states do. How do you see casino gaming in Mississippi evolving as we look towards the next 30 some odd years?
Well, what I'd love to see is expansion's always great.
Right.
As far as, and when I say expansion, the properties we have, as I've said, do a great job. But there's a day coming where we're going to see competition closer to us. And when I say expansion, I mean expansion of amenities, things for people to do, expansion in the market. On the Gulf Coast, we have 12 great casinos. There's other reasons to come there: the seafood, the fishing, the golf. The more the community can make the entire environment more desirable to come to, it's going to help the casinos. So that's what Tunica really needs. I think our Gulf Coast it's not just about the casinos, it's the Gulf Coast. I hate to say it, but in Tunica, it's really the casinos. You do have some great things with the Blues Trail, and there are things they're trying up there, but I would love to see an expansion of the local market to things other than gaming. So, and again, we do that to fight competition. But the casinos themselves, what they provide, the things you see when you walk in, those will always evolve as technology evolves, and most of our operators are at the cutting edge of that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And if I remember correctly, the coast market is predominantly like 2/3 out of state. I hadn't looked at that data.
It usually runs about 60 to 70%. You're
okay.
Right.
Whereas the river markets tend to be a little more domestic.
That's correct.
One thing I wanted to mention before you get out of here, though, because Stephen and Newton really wanted to know if the commissioner could push a must-win bill for me every time. So if you figure that out, let us know. if you could get that.
Yeah, if I figure that out, Lance, you won't see me in this chair anymore.
Yeah, please let us know once you figure that out. It really it is an extraordinary industry and does so much for the state. And you're right, the Gulf Coast is tough to beat. So are Vicksburg and Natchez and other places where we've got casinos in the state.
Yeah, all those markets have things going for them. We have good local leaders in those areas that embrace the casino, and they work and that's on them. We try not to get in the way. And so, what we want to see is if a casino comes to us and says, hey, we want to do a deal with the city, to put this in place, and we're going to partner with them. Absolutely. That's what we want to see, and that's what most of our operators do. They want to stay here, they want to be here, they want to make money for them and for the state, and also provide entertainment.
And everybody's better off as a result.
Absolutely.
Well, Jay, thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Lucian.
We have had the one and only Jay McDaniel, Executive Director of the Mississippi Gaming Commission, here with us. This is Lucian Smith here on the Gallo Radio Show on SuperTalk Mississippi. Stick with us for more after this.